Hey, folks, this is Chris from the Domino team here with another episode of Instructional Designers in Offices drinking coffee or tea or water, whatever your beverage of choice is. You know, we're not fanatics here. We don't force a beverage choice on anyone in particular, whatever works for you. Gang, my colleague Paul is away this week. He's taking vacation time. How weird is that? Crazy. Anyway, that said, I'm here this week with Danielle Wallace from Beyond the Sky. Danielle, hey, welcome to our little gig here.
It's so amazing to be here. This is so
Mhm.
much fun.
Very cool. Hey, I don't know if folks in the big world know much about you, so tell us all about a bit of your background, that sort of a thing.
So I lead up a group at Beyond the Sky Custom Learning, where we are really focused on creating effective learning solutions. So that looks like custom e-learning, virtual class, micro-learning video, the full gamut, all really tailored in on what's going to be effective to actually help our industry. And that's where I'm personally passionate about, is helping elevate our industry to ensure that our learning solutions are truly effective.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I've been doing this for the past 15 years. Prior to that, spent a few decades within the corporate world of making messages stick through the marketing lens.
Nice. And I love it when folks have both the e-learning and or the learning and the L&D world, but that extra marketing flavor to bring in, because it really is. We've talked about it in other episodes, but there's a lot of, it's kind of a Venn diagram in terms of goals, etc. There's a lot of overlap in terms of successful tips, techniques, strategies, etc. And yet we don't think of them very often anyway as being so much of a Venn diagram, etc. We have a really, I'm going to say, controversial topic title today: the performance paradox, solving L&D's $100 billion waste problem. um wow, eh? Let's just start there. What is the waste problem? What's the problem that we're talking about today?
So much of what the world deems as training is ineffective. So we, hopefully all of us on this call, can look at this through the lens of performance support, learning design, some degree of background and skills. But when you look at the so much of the training that's there, it is painful for then the collective us, because we know it's not leading through to actual skills and change. Instead, we're confronted with slides, with text, and this is deemed as training. If I bridge that to my experiences in the marketing world, so much of what we did was making things stick, changing behavior, making messages stick, actually driving performance. And we do have a lot to learn from the marketing world on that lens. And we're really facing this imperative now to ensure that us as a community, as this talent development, learning and development group, to ensure that what we're doing is actually moving the needle, is actually effective.
Hmm. The number of times that we're presented with a whole pile of information that someone believes people need to know, and then the expectation is we're going to just, I don't know, put some pretty pictures on it and say to people, here, take the training, and that's job one is done, right?
Ta-da! It's solved. People know it now. They know it. Or the one I like the best is, okay, we don't have enough time. we we've got like this hour of technical training, using that as a number, but people don't have time, so we'll just talk faster. We can get it in 30 minutes. We'll just talk faster. if you don't understand, no problem. You can just listen on a replay and listen slower. I'm like, oh, it's so funny. It's so fun to think about, especially if the collective we can look outside our professional world and also take a step back and looking at it more a large. And I say that, so if I look outside, putting aside some of the client work I'm doing, if I look at the other cohorts and groups I'm a part of where I'm the student, it's like, oh my gosh, this is just so painful because I know it's not going to stick. Listening to a video at twice the speed is not going to work. Taking a knowledge-based course with a quiz at the end, like I'm not actually going to change my behavior. It's actually not effective.
I'm thinking about some of the annual security courses and things that people in organizations have to take, and and it's the same course year to year. It's just information, and as you say, there's a a 10-question quiz at the end. And I know I've had a few of those, and my reaction has always been, "Can and there's forced narration, so you have to listen to
Oh
it
yeah.
even though the exact words are on the page." And I'm a fast reader. Why can't I just go? No, no, no. You've gotta listen to it all. Anyway.
I was
Uh,
recently, actually, on that note, I was recently looking at a course, which was exactly that. It was a compliance course. It was just dreadful. The slides were dreadful, and I need to get through it. So I was like auditing this, and I don't have to. I don't have to actually read the course to pass the test. Like I literally can pass the test without reading it. Without reading it, like I can pass the compliance test.
mhm.
So like, I'm not sure how effective that is. I mean, part of it's because I, as a text taker, know that it's always all of the above is the correct answer. It's always the longest answer is always the correct. So I can go through, pass this compliance course, which is dreadful to start with, and yay, I'm now trained. Uh-oh.
Yeah. So I mean, what do we do about this?
Yeah. So where I'm really hoping we can help drive the industry is in more not only performance driven solutions. So if the issue is people aren't um if people are, let's say they're fighting within their teams, is the issue actually the fact that they have a commission structure that enables them to fight, and getting along training, collaboration training is not going to work. So performance solutions. And then when we are doing training, though, it is like a training solution is needed. Then it's really thinking about it in a way that's intentional to drive skill application. Because our goal within a world of training, even we're looking at creating a course, our goal is never the course. And I find that we often, even within the industry, we forget that. We lose sight. Like, okay, great, we can make this course more interesting and engaging with more animation or a video or nicer color palette. Great. I mean, engaging is table stakes, but none of that is relevant if it's a knowledge driven course when in fact we need people to do different. So just because I can name the 5 types of difficult conversations that there are in the workplace doesn't mean I can do anything with that information.
Doesn't mean I'm going to be able to have any of those 5 types
Yeah.
successfully. Yeah.
Yeah. So our ability to strive to more application focused methods really enable that.
Yeah, for sure. I remember, and I wish I could always remember where I've heard things, but we do talk a lot about engagement, and so you see a lot of cases where people add interactions or Jeopardy style games or something like that in the middle of it. And for me, my perspective is always, well, if it's relevant to work and people see the value in it, then that's the engagement right there. If it's sales training, you have built-in motivation because folks are monetarily motivated, to do better in their work, so they will take something. But if you interrupt that with things that take people out of the relevance to their work, it's not actually an engagement strategy; it's a distraction strategy, and it erodes confidence too in the content. Like, oh, this again, oh, this again. So really understanding the context of the work, the context in which the tasks we're trying to help people do better, are taking place, etc., versus something, wrapping around it. Cami Bean coined the phrase a long-ish time ago, clicky, clicky, bling, bling, making things look, pretty and fun, but is that really being helpful? And is that
Yeah.
really a valuable type of engagement?
And I guess that's a trend I saw that maybe so that if I were to categorize things in decades, so that was a trend I really saw from the last decade, is the overall drive on making the strive for engagement. I mean, part of it is, this is just table stakes. Part of it is having the right effective learning visual design, learning experience.
Mm.
That's actually just table stakes. But interesting as I look at through the past periods of time that I did see that big increase in that. Great, awesome. But let's move beyond engagement. I like to provocatively think there's 5 things that we look at incorrectly when we look at the world of learning and development. One of them, the first one really is that goal of engagement. The goal isn't engagement. It was never the goal. The goal was changing people's performance. The goal was actually a skill change. The goal was knowledge that's used for a purpose. And there's different ways we can help enable that, whether it's using storytelling to drive relevance, role playing, whether it's application focused activities, or whether it's even things such as pairing with a coach or peer mentors to have the on the job application and individual nudges. But the goal within that focus of engagement, great, but that was never the goal itself to start with.
Mm-hmm. I think part of the engagement focus came from recognition that a lot of the things that people were putting into LMSs never got completed, right? So if we make it more interesting, maybe they'll at least complete it.
And I think it was a needed focus in that if I again look at chunks of periods of time, I think it was needed because prior to that we had awful looking slides turning into an e-learning, like awful. In today's standards, maybe fine for the 90s, but again, this course I was looking at recently was definitely well below the standards. So if we can at least make things visually appealing, definitely they'll help people understand knowledge, they'll help people understand. And I think now we're at a point though where we can go beyond engagement and we can do so in a way that actually drives effective performance.
Mm-hmm. So you say you've got 5 things. We've
I
talked
do.
about one there. Let's.
Yes. The second fallacy I typically see is, this is controversial, is we're striving to make training fun and easy. So you spoke to Jeopardy style game. What's interesting in that though is we're also striving to make it easy for learners. So this comes through in many different ways, whether it is through things such as a game or adding prizes, or whether it's just through how information is chunked. So it's just not chunked, how learners are experiencing the course. So it's really easy. And this is controversial because training can be designed to be difficult. Learning itself actually takes effort. Like it takes effort and nobody wants to do it. Like I don't want to put effort either. I totally get it. Like just zap me with the knowledge like from the Matrix. Boom, suddenly I know all these languages. Great, done. Yeah, I would love that. But the real secret is that learning takes effort. And it's this effortful learning and it's the trying and getting feedback and it's the thinking applying to our past mental models that actually helps us grow and learn. But learners don't like that. And then in turn, their leaders are uncomfortable with that approach. Learning leaders are uncomfortable with that approach. I think we all would love just to be able to sit back and watch that video on twice the speed. Yes, great. And I can just sit back, absorb, learn. I don't need to put any effort because I don't want to put an effort. But the real secret is learning takes effort. And that's why things such as role plays become useful because it's application focused, it's effort, but it's actually actionable. Or why various simulation or scenario based learning where people actually have to think are effective. I wouldn't say fun per se, like yeah, but they are effective.
Yeah. And I mean, that comes back to being rooted in, the real world of the work that needs to be done. not turning something into a space adventure, where you're going to collect, as you said, collect prizes along the way because you've completed certain amounts of content. No, let's focus on making sure that people actually have the skills that they need in the real world, in that and having the training reflect that real world context for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's number 2. Number 3.
So number 3 is our focus on content. So especially when we look outside the industry, but even within our industry, we're very focused on, okay, what content do we need to impart? What content we create content-driven courses, and this is amplified because of the recent surge of content creators online. Awesome, fantastic, fabulous. But our focus on content um, is undermining what we as a profession know as actually what can be an effective learning. So rather than push out content to people and test them with a quiz, voila, we can peel that back and think to what do people actually need to apply? What do people need to do? This hasn't changed. Like this is an approach that we've had for a while. Like this actually hasn't changed. We know this, but I think the layering on top of what some amazing, content creators or YouTube artists are doing is having us as industry also rethink. I would argue to say, because we're in the world of corporate training and development typically or such, the need to be able to actually change behavior becomes important. And we don't always have the intrinsic motivation of people to be able to do so. Like we actually have to impart. So just because we can have a great presenter, be engaging and have things flying, like say I was a YouTube artist, pushing content, that doesn't quite translate well enough to be that focused use of time that our corporate learner has.
Mm-hmm. Well, the focus on content, for me, the anchor idea on how to approach creating training, et cetera, differently from that perspective is Kathy Moore's action mapping approach, where you are
Exactly.
very much focused on what's the business goal, reduce risk, increase safety, increase profits. What's the task that this needs to be done and how to meet this? And then working back from that, what do people need to know to be able to, what do people actually need to be able to practice in order to achieve this goal? And therefore, what do they need to know? And then so that the information is actually the back end piece, working backwards from what's the behavior that needs to be to be changed or implemented, etc. And I've always found it a really awesome structure for helping have that conversation with the people who I've just handed you. They've already put together 800 slides and and here's 4 PDFs, and we need to put all of this into a course, and helping them. It's a good framework for winnowing that down, aiming at something that's effective, and it also gives you a good chance to have a conversation with the SMEs to help them understand. Because the minute you start talking about business goals, people go, "Oh, you're right. I am accountable, for these things, etc." So it's a way of shaping the conversation with the subject matter experts or the other stakeholders who do get focused on. We need to have them
Yeah,
know everything. We need to make sure
yeah,
that they've read all of
yeah,
this.
yeah. And this is constantly comes up. Like this is a constant. Everybody knows this. And like you said, Chris, this is not a new concept even.
Hmm.
But I think the over application that we have of the layered on top makes it more difficult. And thank you for putting to the chat. Definitely some very tested, tried and true. Not, and I understand, like recognize this is not all to say that we won't have content driven courses because or parts of content driven courses. Like I get it. Like I get our corporate environments and the way our leaders don't understand this. They themselves think teaching is effective. So we put all the information in there. Too much, we just talk twice as fast. More clicks to advance. So they themselves don't understand that courses don't need to be content driven to be effective. But that said, then those that are working with those organizations, those departments, those subject matter experts, at least we can use things such as Kathy Moore's action mapping, or at least we can be proactive to have that conversation versus only defaulting to a content driven course.
Hmm. Um, when you're talking about, the people above us who w- one of the challenges I feel we continue to have as an industry is that everybody knows what learning looks like,
Oh.
right? We all grew up going into a classroom, and there was someone at the front telling us things, and we
Mhm.
were writing those things down, etc. And then we became adults, and we started going to webinars where people are telling us things, etc. What's the phrase? Telling ain't training. And I'm forgetting
Mhm.
whose book that title that I'm just ripping off there, um, but everybody thinks they know what learning looks like, and it's that model of information being pushed, and then a quiz at the end, um, if needed. Um, so that's one of the things we struggle with, is that I think so many of the people who are stakeholders, or who are parts of the organization outside of what we do, already have a picture, and they feel that that's the way it ought to be, and that's the way it's going to continue to be. So we're almost always struggling with, or battling, that perception, that predisposition to what it's supposed to look like.
Therein is a challenge, which is actually the fourth
Ooh.
fallacy we typically see is we'll use questions to quiz. So exactly what you said, Chris. Here's a course. We test people on the end. Voila, they pass a test. Great, they're trained. We were once doing a course on mental health. They gave us all the information, typical subject matter expert content, nice no information. Voila, great, you're trained. You can now have conversations about mental health with your direct reports. I don't think so. Instead, we revise that to be an experience-based e-learning, but story-driven course. People are actually thinking, reflecting, what might I do different? How might that come through? So the role of questions completely changed. The role of questions suddenly became learning activities. Oh, if I say this, what feedback will I get? Likewise, in another course we had, difficult conversations. So there's like 4 different models. Okay, and then start off with Maslow's and like the drama triangle, and then we had the stay theory and the lock theory, and like all these different theories. Great for difficult conversations. And we tested people. How is that effective? Great, now I can tell you the sides of the drama triangle. Great, now I can identify the types of difficult conversations. Instead, what we have is a really more application focused area where we're not using quiz questions to be remedial. You did bad. Instead, the questions become thinking activities. So we've reframed it completely into a role play, an AI driven role play. So people are actually able to practice this difficult conversation and then get their own personalized feedback at scale. And it's just short circuits it so much. So people can be more effective, but also without the long content driven course with the quiz at the end. Voila, the quiz is irrelevant. What's a better use of questions is to get people to think, to understand, to get feedback, to link to their own mental models.
Hmm. Um, a lot of what we've been talking about, and I know some folks don't totally support the um, Bloom's structure, but I mean, we're talking about moving people up
Mhm.
from
Yeah.
rote memorization of information through to, understanding, up to application, and taking things up those notches, so to speak. So much of it. Yeah. All right. So before we jump in further, let's recap. What was number one?
Number one is the goal is engagement. It's not engagement. The goal is performance. Okay.
Right on.
The second point is the idea of making training fun and easy. I, actually, learning takes effort.
Hmm.
So sorry. I'm so sorry. The third idea is our content driven focus. So we're creating content courses when instead, why not have people do application? Like that conversation example I shared. And then fourthly is not using questions just as this remedial check, right, wrong, you're bad. You don't know this knowledge. Instead, use questions as a way that people can learn, whether it's through scenarios, whether it's through role plays and such. Which leads me to the fifth point.
Number five, drum roll.
Yes. So really costly, common training mistake is when things get tight on time. Let's look at as if this was a virtual class. We would just truncate all the reflection activities. Things get fast. As I mentioned, we speed up how we talk. We cram more information in. we focus and prioritize the content as if I say more, that it's actually going to create a useful impact in your life. No, no, no. A better solution would be to design from the start, intentional reflection, so people can apply what they're learning in. I encourage those listening right now to think about,
Mhm.
if you like to write down you yourself, if there's ways that you can rethink, if you're prioritizing engagement, and maybe shift that instead to an actual performance outcome, like application. If you yourself can make a list to think about, like your own out of reflection right now. Am I making training fun when I actually I need to have people think and do, and it takes effort? Are you yourself focusing on content instead of application? And are you yourself really using questions only to test knowledge? Because again, when timing's tight, this is what we always cut. We always cut the reflection. And I could speak at nauseum, doesn't matter. If you're not going to do anything with this, that's actually the important piece that we need to keep.
Mhm. Especially in this day and age when people have so many other distractions. I mean, if it's a live situation, well, everybody's checking their emails. If all you're doing is talking, they got the recording. They can go back to if they want to remember something or what have you. But or even it's a live session. You're at the front of the room, but there's an awful lot of phones in hands and other people. People doing all kinds of other things, and that's fine. They're adults. They can make their choices as part of the the learning process. But it's almost an implicit demonstration that telling people stuff doesn't really
Right.
doesn't sink in.
I was part of as a learner in a program, and I was so frustrated because I was seeing this all play out. I saw that they were running out of time. They cut all the application activities. Like they even forget, not just cutting reflection. They cut all activities for us to work with each other, to talk, to think, to like do, and they just spoke faster. Like, no, like, well, it doesn't matter what you're saying, it's not sticking. And now I'm completely bored of like an hours and like hour 2, hour 3 of you talking faster. This would have been much better design and a better use of our time, because all of us learners are adults, a much better use of our time if instead we can focus to be on what do people actually need to be applying to make a meaningful difference in their own work worlds, without skimping on the activities or reflection on role plays. Happens all the time in our pursuit of a content driven course.
Mhm. Let's recap the 5 for the folks
Yeah.
that are
I'll
trying to
recap
keep track.
the 5. So the first is, what I would say is, don't focus on engagement, focus on performance. Instead of making courses fun, let's make them deliberately effortful. Thirdly, instead of a content-driven course, have an application-driven course. Fourthly, instead of using quizzes just to test, use them to have people think and learn. And fifthly, don't skimp on the activities and the reflection, even when timing's tight.
Mhm.
And this all is perpetuated, and this all stems from exactly what you were saying, Chris, because the world at large, especially within our corporate world, people think, hey, I went to school, I know how to train, put some slides, we'll teach, we'll quiz, we know that they know it. So we have an added challenge, and we need to be the champions, because the work world at large doesn't understand what it takes to be a useful use of people's time, to have actually effective
Mhm.
learning.
We not only have to do our jobs, but we have to do so much representation of our jobs. We have to be constantly trying to change people's perspectives and understanding about what it is, what's the value that we actually do bring, and how we can actually bring better value um, to folks. I mean, it's money, and if the money isn't actually producing change, and then why would anybody spend the
Sure.
money?
We have a great opportunity to really elevate our roles and also truly help the business to actually be that champion, to not just execute. Great. Yeah. I mean, sure, we could create more training courses and what, take some slides, put a quiz in, like, of course. But it's this opportunity we have to actually drive a level up. It's popular books, Dr. Keith Keating, Trust Learning Advisor, and Hidden Value, and others, just really reinforce that now is the time to do exactly what you were saying, Chris, to help the business, to help drive to things that are actually going to drive performance, and do so in a way that's that ongoing partnership.
Yeah. So we've got a little bit of time left here. Let's talk a little bit more about, well, let's bring your marketing experience, back into
Yes.
play. What are some of the things that you saw, from that marketing experience that you can then think about
Yeah.
applying to those 5 things?
Yeah, exactly. So the real secret in the marketing world is data. It's all data. And it's always been data. It's always been. What we tend to is that society at large gets entrapped with, oh, great, it's whatever the newest thing is. And I've seen this throughout the years. I've seen, oh, great. From a marketing standpoint, oh, okay, now we're going to have VR, or now we're going to be focusing on this particular communication means. Those are just the external trappings, and even the fancy ad campaigns. Those are the fun things that people, the sizzle that
Mhm.
you make TV shows out of, the things that people want to hear about. What if you peel that back? Effective marketing is based on data. When I was at Procter and Gamble, that was my, I mean, I was a brand manager, but the real secret to everybody's role was data analysis. So we went through a lot of data, we analyzed, we spotted trends, we escalated when we needed more research to happen. Everything was a database decision, and that allowed us to devise the right strategy. And only with the right strategy, then we look at what the right tactics were and the right ad campaigns. That's all irrelevant if you don't have the right data and the right strategy. You compare that to the world of learning and development. We do have data. So likewise, in the marketing world, a lot of the data was understanding your consumer. In the learning world, we have, and we can create data, qualitative data and quantitative data, to understand who our learners are. And then with that learners, devise the right strategy, just like we do in the marketing world. And then once we have the right strategy, then we can devise what the right tactics are, just like the marketing world. Good example of that is, from a marketing standpoint, my mother took over my dance studio. So I started a dance studio when I was 16. She took it over when I moved to the city I'm in now. And she was getting approached to do advertising. And she put ads in the newspaper because, like most people, she jumped to tactics. Ads in newspaper. I'm like, Mom, you get better payoff if you went to a school parking lot and just gave everybody $2 and told them they can come back and get another $2 if they show up in class. Like, your newspaper, you're reaching like a demographic that is not taking dancing. Like, if you look at that demographic, like, it doesn't match who you're targeting. Like, there's no fit. Likewise, we see the same thing within the learning world, where we often would create solutions that the tactics are wrong, where the audience is not there. I see this, for example, within a client-facing systems training. There's e-learning that's created to help people walk through exactly step by step as needed. But I don't know if these busy professional clients will actually take the time to go through these step by step to take an e-learning like an employee would take an e-learning. No, maybe instead with better insights on who that audience is, maybe understanding what their needs are. Maybe they want an FAQ. Maybe they want, like, maybe that'd be because they're looking for quick questions. Maybe it's a chatbot because they're looking for quick questions. Maybe they're looking for a job aid because they're looking for quick questions. Maybe they're not looking for quick questions. Maybe it's something completely different. Maybe they need a phone call. Like, who knows? It all starts with the data and having a solid understanding of who your audience is.
Mhm. Systems training. Hey, we're a software company helping, folks make e-learning courses. And I mean, we know from experience on our side too that we can have people work through a very thorough program coming up to speed on all of the features, etc. But until they actually have to need to do something, they're not going to retain, the vast majority of it. And what you're hoping in a lot of cases that they remember just enough to figure out where to go and look for more info, or to relearn, or oh, right, there was something about, video files. Right, I got a video file now. It's been 4 months. How do I do this now, versus, way back 4 months ago when we took the training. So bridging that gap is so critical and so important.
It's so important. And it really ties into what's needed in the end for that training to be effective.
For sure. What other insights, I guess, do you bring forward from your marketing time?
Yeah, some other really key insights is the focus not only on what the learner thinks they need, but having insights into what you anticipate they'll need. So again, this is coming from the data-driven piece within the marketing world. I launched a lot of products. I launched so many products, and I launched products that people couldn't necessarily articulate a need for at the time. For example, one of the product I launched was Mr. Clean Magic Eraser, and for that, people were fine. Like they didn't see a need for what it does, which, as we positioned it, was remove marks you never thought you could. Like it was like fine. People continued life. There wasn't like, oh my God, I need this, right? But yet through the data analysis, we realized, okay, and through early testing, it's like, actually, I think there is this unmet need there. So it's being able to use data from a learning standpoint to have some foresight into, oh, given these changes I'm seeing in my workplace, the changes I anticipate seeing next year in the workplace because of restructuring, we should do people need, like, how are people scoring on their resilience, or how is engagement faring? Like, might there be a need so we can get around this to help better equip the organization, or maybe from a change management? Like, what can we do to proactively meet the needs that they don't yet know they have? So basically, it's an expanded use of data, and from this true performance consulting lens.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, some organizations do go so far as to from a learning perspective, think about personas and the learner. But again, the vast majority of the stuff that we end up doing is, as we've been saying, content heavy. Here's information, and people just need the information. So
Yeah, and this timing really is now. It's just we're really driving to the increasing importance of our abilities to create effective learning. Not only does the workplace need it, given the accelerating pace of change, given everything that's happening, the workforce actually needs, whether it's upskill or whether it's resilience training, whatever the organization needs, we as learning development can actually support that. Like, we're actually uniquely poised to look across the organization and provide that. And then on the other hand, we also have this world where the work world has always thought training is just teaching and anybody can do it. That's always been there. Now we have the opportunity, especially with more advances in technology, to up our game. Because if you want a course from a slide, and you're a business leader, why not just get generative AI to do that? Generative AI won't push back. They won't keep asking you about objectives. Like, you can create some ineffective materials quite easily. So hence why we have the opportunity to be that trusted learning advisor, to put forward through more effective uses of learning when we are tasked to do learning, and do so in a way that we're able to showcase that this will move the needle versus being able to quickly create courses. It's a very different shift than where we've had in the past.
Yeah, the AI, kind of reminds me of the 1,000 monkeys typing on 1,000 typewriters. Much more effective than that, but eventually an e-learning course would get produced, right? So we do face a challenge in our space. We know what makes good learning, but because maybe everybody else in our organization has a picture of something else that isn't a good learning process, then stuff being generated very quickly, etc., is totally suitable. I mean, especially if we're already experiencing things
Mhm.
that aren't great to begin with,
Yeah.
or aren't models of that
Yeah.
better learning.
And don't get me wrong, at times there's completely a need for something that's just fast, like 100%. Great, we need some fast slides, or we need someone to just to talk to train their team. Like, of course. I'm not saying not the business doesn't have a need to do that. What I am saying is where we can provide value and create effective learning, we should provide value and
For sure.
create effective learning. Like, it's all about driving where there's that value.
For sure. Yeah, and the ability to create more content faster really is only going to produce more content, not necessarily more learning at all. So
Great. Yes, we have more quizzes at the end and more quizzes that are easy to pass, or it doesn't matter because it's just
yeah,
knowledge anyhow. It's just knowledge.
it's just things that you need to know, not things that you need to do. So,
Yeah. And when we're creating value, if they're actually things people need to do, then perhaps we have a role there to
mhm.
help our organizations and help elevate our industry at the same time as well.
Excellent. That is probably a good spot for us to bring our conversation to a close. Danielle, thanks so much for joining us. This has been an absolutely joyful conversation to have with you. So many critical things to think about. And you know what? These are so many of these things, regrettably, from our industry perspective, are things that we've been, talking about year after year after year, even here on Idiotic. These are such common themes, but they're so critical, and hopefully we can continue to move the needle on them.
Indeed. I think we have the opportunity now to really elevate ourselves, especially with the advances of technology. So now is our time to truly shine, to support the organization change, and do so in a way that's actually effective.
Yeah, for sure. All right, gang. Hey, listen, everybody joining us live here. Thanks so much for joining us for today's session. As always, I need to mention instructional designers in offices drinking coffee. Hashtag idiotic is brought to you by the team here at Domino. We help a lot of teams do better things in the e-learning space. Check us out if you feel that there's something that's not working for you currently in the tools that you're using. We will be back in 2 weeks' time with another idiotic episode. And in the meantime, it's time to play that theme music and dance on out again. Danielle, again, thank you so much for joining us. Absolutely great session that we've had here today. Thanks so much.
So much fun. Thank you.
Awesome.